The animation industry is undergoing one of the most significant shifts we've seen in years. When the landscape gets tough, the talented don't just pack up, they connect, they adapt, and they build. Today, we're diving deep into how modern creatives are navigating the industry slowdown, multitasking across indie projects, and keeping the creative flame alive. Talent thrives here. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Lance LaFort of the LaFort Talent Group. We are a recruiting firm. We specialize in management hires across North America. If you're an artist, a producer, or anyone managing creative teams trying to figure out how to navigate today's unpredictable animation market, you'll want to stick around for the next few minutes. Today, I'm joined by two industry catalysts who are actively building a safety net and a launching pad for artists. John Lay and Kathy McDonald from ACC, the Animation Career Community. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being on the show.
Well,
Oh,
thanks for
thank you.
having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Let's start at the beginning if we could. Give us the elevator pitch for ACC, the Animation Career Community Start. How did it get going, and what's the mandate of your group?
Well, basically, our mission statement for the ACC is we're looking to build and grow a community in animation that supports sharing career information, resources, and networking. We're really looking to pull people together. That's a big thing about the ACC, and I think in this environment, especially in the landscape of the business, it's a very important time to keep people connected.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
the information out there can be really disparate all
Hmm.
over. And so we're trying to amalgamate that to one place.
excellent. Yeah, and I served for many years in the industry. I do find there's a real community feel. People really look after each other a lot,
Sure. Yeah.
which has always been beneficial. But great, and I think it's more important nowadays with all this remote work that you build other channels to connect people. So good on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the way the industry has been going for a while with social media, all the different platforms, and obviously the changes to how, content is distributed and delivered to the audience now.
Yep, yep. I'm curious if for both of you, if you can give us a little
Hmm.
bit of your background, your bio, how you got to
Sure.
what you're doing and what you've done in your careers.
Kathy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I've been working in animation from 20 years. I started at Sheridan Animation doing their classic animation program. And I've done almost every form of animation, but I started in stop motion animation. I worked at a Toronto-based company called Cup of Coffee, if anybody's ever heard of that before. And then after doing that for quite a long time, I worked in the States a little bit and then transitioned to CG animation here in Toronto. But I've also done 2D animation. And what got me into this was that I found the younger artists were either making similar mistakes that I'd made previously in the past with my career, or were just missing lots of little bits of information around building a career.
Mm,
And so I would step in and I give that advice that was always really well received.
right,
So I thought like, oh, we should build something where it's not so hard to find those kind of tips.
right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, my purposes are very much aligned with Kathy and our other partner, Kyrene. But basically, for anyone that doesn't know me, I've been in the business 30 plus years. Actually, what year is this? 2020. So about 34 years, actually, almost, pretty much. And same thing, I went to Sheridan to study at the college animation program. And my first job was actually in layout. So I started off in 2D layout. And funny enough, it was the one thing I never wanted to do in my career in animation. It's a funny story because I just felt it was too technical, too clinical for me.
Right.
But it was the first and technically the only job that was offered to me when I came out of college because there weren't many jobs back in the early 90s either.
Yeah.
So it being the first and only job offered to me, I took it very seriously. Like I thought about it, I'm like, okay, you know what? It's a foot in the door. I
Right.
think for a lot of people, you have to consider those things too. So I took the job and I learned on the job with, the help of the team around me, other veterans, and obviously my supervisors at the time that layout was a lot more than what we learned in school. And I could be more creative and there was a lot more power in being a layout artist than just kind of copying what was in a storyboard and blowing it up or enlarging it on a Xerox machine. There's a lot more process to it. But
Right.
to fast forward, I kind of moved from that into storyboarding and design, done some animation more on my own because animating, I find I'm better suited to it when it's my own content, when it's my own
Right.
characters. And then obviously eventually I made my way into assistant directing for many, many years and then
Mm.
directing more recently.
John, when you were talking, it reminded me of
Yeah.
I remember working on a feature film where we had a head of story that had only done feature. He'd never worked in TV. And a
Right.
lot of our board artists coming on were television guys, kids, preschool television show guys. And
Hmm.
it was funny because there was a moment where he said, like, I want you to question each character in this scene. Why are they
Right.
there? What's their motivation for it? And there was two guys I remember specifically going, we've never had time to ask these questions. Let's just get it done, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but this had a story. Said it's feature. We're doing about 3 to 5 seconds a week, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of time here, gentlemen. Let's dig in here. And so it was funny
Absolutely.
to see the pace change,
Yeah.
Um, and these two guys loved it. They were like, "Oh my God, we actually we were creative all of a sudden. You know, we're helping tell the story rather than
Hmm.
take the character from here to here, zip zip zip." Because we've done preschool shows where it's 30 or 35 or 40 seconds a week. So the
Oh,
difference
yeah.
to feature was.
Yeah. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's the funny thing, like, and kind of from both sides, like going from TV or series work to feature, you
Yeah.
suddenly are allotted a lot more time. You're expected to use that time to
Yes.
really help craft the film like a real film.
Yeah.
And I do know from some people that I've known that have gone the other way from feature to series, it was a bit more challenging because they got so used to the feature system of having all that time
Yeah.
and being able to finesse and niggle and work things out. But now they were given their load of work and they have zero time to think. They have to
Right.
plant everything down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. When I went out to California to work on a stop motion feature, I remember it was such a shift to how do I feel, what's this time for, right? What
Yeah.
what tools am I bringing to the table that's going to elevate what I'm doing that is better in a feature that we just don't have time for in television. But television gives you a foundation to move quickly
Hmm.
that I found useful even in feature work.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you do end up against the wall at times, and sometimes you're given some, oh my God, we need this entire sequence reboarded or
Yeah.
redone in a small period of time, and you have to be able to like tighten up the belt, roll up the sleeves, and get to it. And I think what we're discussing here is part of what the ACC is about too.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
sharing this information for people that don't have experiences, maybe on the feature or vice versa, the series level, or in any other department, and they're curious about it, or they need information because perhaps they've decided, hey, I'm going to start my own short film at home, and
Right.
I need to know what to look for and what the questions to ask and what to expect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I can also remember one of the series that we had running. One of the animators was really struggling with the pace.
Hmm.
Like south of 20 seconds a week. She was, we were going much faster. And I remember the director coming to me, it's sort of frustrated, like he said, she just can't do it. She just can't. She's not capable. Got to
Right.
get her off the team. Blah blah blah. He said, I've tried. Anyways, we had a couple of short films and a small feature running, and one of the directors over there said, well, I'll bring her to me. I'll try her out. Let's see.
Hmm.
And it was funny because in about 3 weeks, he said, I think she's one of the most gifted animators I've ever met.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, but not at high speed. Like
Right.
she's an artist. She's a craft person. She is
Yeah.
loving the 5 seconds a week pace. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
she's making great work. So it's just one of those things, it's not for everyone. We can't all dial up or dial down, I
Of
guess. Some
course.
people
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing some animators leaving when we got too many series. They said, I'm a feature guy. I don't do this. I don't know how to do
Right.
this.
Yeah.
And so, and I found that, and then, or we get a VFX show and we have to change the group of people, because
Hmm.
each one of these vehicles is somewhat related, but different, as you
It can be a
both know
different
really
beast.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And not.
actually, sorry, John, but actually
That's okay.
working in animation, like, yes, you do encounter people who have a hard time transitioning one way or the other. But I think fundamentally, as an animator or somebody working in animation, the expectation is you're going to move from creative project to creative project
Hmm.
and be
Yeah.
able to adapt. So I think more often than not, people can jump to a new style, can jump to a new pace, maybe a different pace, like onboarding paces. But
Right.
most
Right.
crews get there, I find.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
I think so. And it's being given. obviously the right set of tools, parameters, and being open-minded to adjusting yourself and how you work. I think, for a lot of people that work in series, you build your own vocabulary of shortcuts and
Yeah.
short form language, essentially, right?
Yeah.
A lot of what we do in Canada, obviously, is preschool. So there is a certain formula to a lot of what we do, and it's easy to kind of pick up on that. But I think you have to be looking for that, and you have to be open to it as well. And
Yeah.
and it shouldn't diminish the value of the artwork either. Yes, it's faster paced and it's oftentimes a lower budget, but I think you can always make the best of what you have wherever you are at. Take that with you. And tomorrow's another day. You can improve on that still. And no matter where you end up, you just keep learning. It doesn't matter whether you started in series or started in feature.
Yeah, I've often just thought they're different art forms. They're related, but it's or the target audience. The funny thing in my head that always sticks out is when like another Star Wars movie come out, and you'll see a, I don't know, 35 or 45-year-old animator who remembers the first Star Trek and goes, I don't like the script, I don't like this, I don't like that. And I go, hey, the Star Trek franchise is aimed at, 11 to 12-year-olds. So if you don't like the script and all these other things, you're not the target, right?
Right, yeah.
And, and I remember this guy saying, no, but I grew up with this. This is my thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not 12 anymore. So,
yeah.
So it is, it certainly has other audiences, but, there's a main target that's going to buy the merch. And
And I think, again, like these discussions, the sharing of this kind of information, that's at the core of what the ACC is about. Like for me, especially in my early years of being in animation, I've always had an interest in the business side. Not to say that I would become a business person or on the business end of animation, but for me, I was always interested because I'd like to know the inner workings of everything that I touch.
Yeah.
That extends to all my hobbies. And for anyone that knows me, they know I have too many hobbies. But but the reality is that, there were times where I felt there were these gaps that I could see, not just in what I was looking for, but even after asking questions of other people, finding out the gaps existed, and then finding there was some resistance at times to me asking those questions. And I mentioned previously that I would ask about, what it's like to be a producer and go to some of these trade shows or, something like a Kid Screen or Con or anything like that, or even NAPI. And a lot of times I hit a wall. People, oftentimes producers, not that they're bad people, because they're trying to protect themselves in their job. So I do understand, but they also see it as, we're the producers, you're an artist. Why are you interested? And for me, it's always been, why should I not be interested?
Right. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think we talked about it a few weeks back too, of the idea that, stay in your lane. Some people have that. I've been sometimes in management, and someone I've literally heard the words, if that's above your pay grade, you can't ask that question. I'm like, well, I'm curious. Well, stop being curious. But it is what it is. But I appreciate what you're saying, because I think it's if you're going to be in the business long enough, any business, you might sort of want to break out of the lane, so to speak, that you were in for 10 or 12 years and go, but I want to bracket the whole industry. Like when I started recruiting, I had been an artist and I've been in marketing and an account manager, and I was kind of loosely called a creative suit. I have an art degree and I'm an art director, but I'm hiding in an account management suit. And I'm that annoying guy in the studio to go, why that red? And they all go, what?
Right.
I'm like, well, I wouldn't use that red there. I'm like, well, what do you have an opinion? Shut up, get out of here, right? Or I'd walk in sometimes. I worked in display business in trade show and exhibit and point of purchase displays for a few years, and I'd be with a client and they'd have an idea, and I go, oh, let me get a piece of paper, and I'd start sketching out the layout of this design, and they go, oh, kind of like that, but look that. So we'd spend an hour sketching, and then I'd go back to our art team and go, well, here are the drawings that we came up with. And they'd all look at me like, are you insane? That's what we do. Right. Don't ever, don't ever do that again. Don't you
It goes
ever.
both ways. It goes both ways. I think artists like to gatekeep a little bit too, because well, they're in a slightly more tenuous role sometimes. So gotta hold on to those skills that only you can do.
And I'll tell you, the other part of the story was funny because I worked in a few different studios, and one fellow who was an award-winning designer, he looked at it and he was very angry. He said, "Here's the thing. Tomorrow, I'm going to get in your car and I'm going to take your tie and your suit. I'm going to go do your job." And he said, "You go in that studio and try and win a bunch of awards." You think, like, he was quite offended, right? And then he took my scribbles away. And about a week later, he came back and he had kind of like Leonardo da Vinci'd my drawings, and they were amazing. And I was humbled. I'm like, okay, that's why you are you and I am me, and I'll go get you some more stuff to draw. But it was, he had, and I took that back. And the other thing was, the thing that I designed was about $30,000 or $40,000. What he put together was over $100,000. And my boss said, "Oh, go sell Randy's idea. That's a lot more money for us. Go sell that."
Right.
Like, go, and the client was blown away, and we eventually kind of met in the middle. But it was one of those things, and somebody who had focused on art for most of his career, you could, my joke is I was the Padawan. All of a sudden, I clearly realized I could not wield the lightsaber, because he was, if I could use a Star Wars analogy. The other one I want to tell you about is this fellow Walter. I brought in a bunch of these sketches, and he went, "Oh, these are fantastic," and he said, "Come with me." And he ripped open a huge piece of paper on a drafting board back in the day, and he just started thumbnailing like a million scribbles off of my design. He went, "Take this sheet back to them and see which 3 or 4 they like, and then we'll go from there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, no threat." He was fine with it. He was like, "I'm glad you broke the egg here, but watch what else I could do." And he just kind of like iterated off of the thoughts and kind of brainstormed like 25 million concepts in probably 10 minutes. Yeah. And I brought that back to the client, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's too much. Where do we start?" I'm like, I don't know, but anyways, it's fun to see how creative people work and how they think, and again, to your point about gatekeeping, it's interesting where the lines are blurred in some places, and other places they're very, when we had smaller studios at the beginning, like early 90s, everyone was a generalist because you had to be.
Yeah, you had to collaborate with the entire team.
Yeah, I worked in video game studios where the lighter was also the art director, and he was probably comping something, like, just because the software wasn't sophisticated enough at the time either. You needed kind of mad scientists and alchemists to figure out how to get stuff out the door. And then late 90s, early 2000s, now we've got this compartmentalization where Maya is doing this and Toon Boom is doing that. And there were now like a more robust set of digital tools that before we were using a lot more hand magic, I think, to fake stuff. And and so the industry shifted. But hey,
today
it seems like it's shifted today as well in a different direction. They want you to be a specialist, but they also want you to wear many hats at the same time, which can make it very hard when you're applying for work. For example, like maybe you're an expert in a couple software, but they want you to know every software out there, and also coordination and also tracking. So I found roles now to be when they turn up to be more generalist expectation wise.
Yeah, but I think the landscape too, we're seeing it more and more again, thinking about the social media platforms and streamers now, and a lot more independent projects and independent filmmakers doing their own thing, making a 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute short. You do need to wear that generalist hat, and you do need some awareness. And again, not to keep plugging ACC, but this is what we're here for, right? It's
absolutely,
like, again, bringing everyone together and offering a way to share all this information. So if it's your first time trying to do your own film and you're at a loss for how to put together a budget, or I need to talk to an animator because I have no idea what that process is like, because I've only ever worked in design, perhaps.
Yeah.
Right. I think anyone with any curiosity should start asking those questions. And I think, kind of touching back on what I was saying when I was interested in learning more about production and business, it was a curiosity. It's like, well, I did oftentimes hear a lot of the typical argument, which is like, why can't artists be paid more? And obviously, I think oftentimes they should be paid more. But it made me wonder, like, okay, why can't we be paid more? And then you research and you learn how the business works, and you learn that the money does not come at one time at the very beginning, right? It oftentimes, especially in Canada, comes in
Yep.
the forms of these, loans and grants through these different bodies and organizations. So
Yeah.
it's not, unfortunately, it's not easy to just say, yes, I'm going to give everyone a raise. I wish it was, we all
Yeah.
do wish it was easier, but it's not.
Well, you bring up a great point, John, because similar often I was an HR director a few times and had
Mhm.
the difficult conversation of having to tell people there's no raise this year, and they'd be
Right.
like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, oh, and I remember one CFO said, Lance, we're lightly financed, and I'm using those words delicately,
Right.
which,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I knew they were constantly at the bank borrowing money to build a financing model till their next
Hmm.
payments came in,
Yeah.
and sometimes also squeezing a client like, hey,
Yep.
we really need a deposit or we're not starting your show, or
Yeah.
hey, you're late on your payments and we can't be late on our payroll, so you need to hand over some money or we're stopping your show.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and people on the floor don't hear those conversations, but I was privy
No.
to a lot of those, and it's I think it's sometimes one of those things where you don't want to know what's happening behind those closed doors down the hall, because I often said, like, my end of the hall is no fun.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sandwiched between a founder or the executive group or a group of people that have paid money into this enterprise, and they can see in black and white that it's a very difficult dance sometimes, and often they'd be borrowing money just to hit payroll.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
again, the general public, I don't think understands that side of the business very much. And I often felt we
Hmm.
were about 90 days from closing the doors, and
Hmm.
you always got a payment in just in time. You're like, okay, we're 120
Yeah.
days, and then that
Yeah.
30 days of scrape out, we're 90 again. It was just like band-aid, 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 band-aid,
Yeah.
right?
I
Yeah.
think you'd be surprised how aware the artist side of the community is aware of that. Whether you're giving us explicit information,
Right.
like if you work long enough in animation, you're part of multiple closures, and you
Right,
know
right.
that like the studios are holding on to
Yeah,
solvency by the skin of
Yeah.
their teeth sometimes.
yeah,
And my experience leading teams is like when we get into hot water, if I'm more upfront with the team about what the situation is, they're more on board to trying to find a solution.
yeah.
Whereas if we're always in the dark, uh,
True.
all we can
Mhm.
react to is like the goal and how unrealistic it might be, or why we're working overtime but we don't have any context, or moving deadlines. So I think it's better, like there's got to be a happy balance between understanding the
Sure.
finance and
Hmm.
protecting the team as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, for
great
sure.
point, Kathy. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So let me ask a few more questions about ACC. If I was somebody wanting to find something out, clearly you guys have started a podcast. Is there a
Hmm.
website? Is there a community thing? Is there a school? Is it what other? How do they find you guys, and how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, like right now it's still very early days, even though we have been posting up our podcasts. You
Yeah,
can find them on YouTube. For anyone that doesn't know, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And we do post individually on our LinkedIn pages, so you can always reach out to us there. But we're
yeah.
still continuing to looking to build this out. Again, it's an early work in progress, and we've been very strategic, and we've spent a lot of time planning on how to build this out because we don't
Mm,
we know it's a big undertaking. We can't do it all in one go. And there
right.
are a lot of, like, to be honest, it's not, obviously this is not a completely original idea. There are lots of other
Mm,
people doing similar things, offering a podcast, maybe a website, and even like groups through like mentorships and workshops and stuff like that. And we're looking to be similar, but what makes ACC unique is that we do want to kind of encompass a lot of the industry through multiple channels by offering this more like in a modular sense. So the podcast is really our entry point into what the
sure.
ACC will eventually be about.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for us is really just anyone that's interested, and it's not just for artists. We want to make that clear. It's going to be for everyone in the industry, for artists, for writers, for producers, because again, the goal is to share all this information. So much like we've been talking about right now, we want to be able to have these open forums and groups to communicate all these ideas for anyone that needs any kind of assistance, help, or again, just access to any kind of resource.
Yeah, I
Great.
think something we want to focus on too is career specific
Hmm.
resources. So not there's a lot of artistic technical resources out there, I think, for artists if you go looking.
Sure.
But there's no unified place for career advice. Like, how do you steward your career? What does that mean as somebody
Right.
working contract work?
Yeah.
And we'd like to be more accessible in one location. Obviously, like John said, we have plans and they're still growing. Um, but the podcast is the best way to find us right now.
Excellent. Great. Good. Well, I'm just conscious of the time. I think we've blown by 20 minutes and it's been great. I think we could probably blow by another 20 and still be having a great chat.
For sure.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so look, I want to follow up later as the group progresses and evolves.
Mhm.
So we could peg something out, several months out and see and stay in touch and do like a chapter 2.
Absolutely. And
Yeah, that'd be
I
great.
also want to like add in too very quickly that, we're always looking for, additional guests for our podcast. So
Great.
if anyone of your listeners, anyone listening at all is interested in joining our podcast, please feel free to reach out to us or maybe even through Lance if that's okay.
You can
Absolutely.
also comment on YouTube. We do read the comments
Yes,
right now
yes.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing our best. And the
Yeah.
podcasts are doing well. Like we've got some good views on them.
Yeah.
Obviously, every episode is a little bit different with a different guest, and we're trying to build out a good broad spectrum of topics
Right.
as well. So hopefully, for anyone that is interested in listening, they can find at least a few episodes they can kind of sink into and listen to. But the experiences of each of our guests is what is most important about these conversations.
Good. Gotcha. Great. Good. Any other final comments, parting notes, Kathy? All good? Are we all right?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
actually,
you.
I am going to add something else.
Absolutely.
I
Go
do
for it,
want to
John.
just a quick shout out, to
Yeah.
Kyrene, who is our third partner in crime, obviously.
True.
Kyrene does a lot of the work behind the scenes for us, and Kathy and I
Yeah.
are more kind of front of house,
Yeah.
if I can use that term. Because actually, you know what? Funny enough, animation can be similar to retail and the
Yeah.
restaurant biz, right? Especially when you're talking about insolvencies, I think. I think restaurants have it tougher at times, obviously, but especially since COVID and stuff. But
Yeah.
we can't completely separate ourselves from a lot of the other businesses and industries out there because we are, affected by a lot of what does happen out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's the economy, again, COVID is a good example. It still affected us, and at the beginning, it affected us in a slightly positive way because live action was shut down.
Yeah.
And a lot of that money was then diverted and kind of redistributed to animation projects.
Yeah.
But since all that kind of, settled and the dust kind of settled on that, everything's kind of, outside of what is currently happening with the film industry in general, it being pretty poor.
Yeah.
It's kind of gone back to the way it was. And, I'm sure a lot of people want to talk more about the industry and the future of the industry, and that obviously is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But always look out for each other. I think for me, that's a big thing. Look out for each other. And, if you come across groups, and the ACC might be one of them, but any other group where you can try to help support each other and help give advice, I think everyone would appreciate that ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Well, good. Thanks again. We'll see you both, I'm sure, soon, somewhere, somehow. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate your message and your mandate. I think it's fantastic in this time. So thank you both again.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
And thanks to Kyrene in the back.
Yes.
All right. Take care.